Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, which is Pensions, the Basics in Sage 50 Payroll. My name is Sarah, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Duncan and Alice, who are ready and waiting in the background to answer your questions. And remember, today is part of our Pensions Discovery 2026 badge series. So if you attend at least 5 sessions plus the quiz, you will earn your very own digital badge. But we will talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the session. Let's take a look at what we'll be covering today. So I'll begin with a brief introduction to automatic enrolment, so what it is, why it matters, and your ongoing responsibilities as an employer when it comes to pensions. Next, we'll move on to setting up your pension scheme in Sage 50 Payroll. So I'll show you where to do this, and I'll be highlighting the essential settings that you'll want to double check just to make sure everything runs smoothly. Once your scheme is set up, we'll look at how to assign it to employees. So that's whether you're assigning it to one individual or to multiple employees at once. So I'll look at a couple of the different options available to help you save a bit of time there as well. And then finally, I'll cover off how to check your pension contributions and payments and make any necessary amendments as well. So a couple of quick, easy ways to adjust contributions if needed. So that is what I've got in store for you today. Let's get things started with a bit of an overview of automatic enrolment and your duties as an employer. So, quick overview of auto enrolment. So, this legislation means that every employer in the UK must automatically enrol certain employees into a workplace pension scheme and contribute to it as well. So, even if you just employ one person, you're considered an employer and you have legal duties that begin on the day your first employee starts work. So, that is known as your duty start date. Now, the 4 key steps of auto enrolment. So, firstly, is choosing a pension scheme. So, you'll need to select a pension scheme and set it up with your chosen provider. So, both you and your employees will contribute into this scheme. Now, there are lots of providers and scheme types out there. So, really, with that one, it is just about finding what works best for you and your business. Next is assessing your employees. So, you'll need to work out who to actually put into that pension scheme. So that really means checking each employee's age and their earnings to determine their worker category and whether they're eligible for automatic enrolment or not. Now, we do have a separate webinar that will dive deeper into pension assessments and worker types and things like that. So if you are interested, definitely get signed up for that one as well. You've got communicating with your staff as well. So you will also need to write to your employees, so often referred to as sending pension correspondence. Now, it's important for your employees to understand how automatic enrolment is going to apply to them and what it's going to mean for their pay and their future savings as well. And then finally, you'll need to declare your compliance with the pensions regulator. So you have 5 months from your duty start date to do this. This step just confirms that your pension scheme is compliant and that all the info that you've provided is accurate as well. But if you would like more detailed guidance on these steps, I have included a link just at the bottom of the slide there, just to the pensions regulator website. So really good resource there to get some more comprehensive information. But just a quick note, your duties don't actually end once those 4 steps are complete. So there are some ongoing responsibilities as well that you'll need to stay on top of as an employer. So to remain compliant, you'll need to assess your employees regularly. So you want to assess your employees' age and their earnings every time you run a payroll. Now, this is going to help you identify any changes that might mean an employee now qualifies for automatic enrolment. So, say a pay rise, for example. Now, you can do this manually by checking each employee's record for their age and enter payments for their earnings. But if you are using the pensions module in Sage 50 Payroll, you can actually run a pension assessment, and that will perform that assessment automatically for you. You will continue making regular contributions to your pension scheme as well. So that includes checking that you're meeting those minimum contribution level requirements. So they're going to be 3% from the employer and 8% in total. So typically 3 and 5% you'll see quite commonly. You'll also need to manage any requests from employees to join or leave the pension scheme. And it is really important to keep accurate record of these requests as well, and any changes to their pension status. And last but definitely not least, every 3 years you are required to carry out re-enrolment duties. So what this means re-enrolling any eligible employees who have previously opted out of the pension scheme. Now, this is a legal requirement. They don't have the option to opt out before that. So if they have opted out, they do need to go back in every 3 years, unless they've opted out in the previous year. But again, we do have another webinar on that. So that really is in place just to ensure employees have another opportunity to start saving for retirement. Now, of course, if they do get re-enrolled and they haven't changed their mind, they do want to still opt out, they can do so again. They would just need to submit another opt-out request. But that's a little bit on your ongoing duties. And again, some more detailed guidance linked at the bottom of the slide for the pensions regulator website as well. So now we've looked at those duties. So once you've set up your pension scheme with your provider and you've sorted everything out on their side, it is actually really nice and easy to set up your scheme in Sage 50 Payroll, providing that you do have all the details and info that you need to do so. So I want to move on to actually setting up the scheme within Payroll itself. Now, this is a really important step because the settings that you enter at this stage are going to determine how those contributions are calculated. So reason why we say to make sure you've got all of that info from the provider that you've set it up with is purely to make sure that calculation is correct and to make sure all in all their contribution is going to be right when it comes to processing the pay. So a bit of a quick checklist of the key information that you'll need. So first, the type of pension scheme. What kind of scheme do you operate? Is it stakeholder, master trust, or another type of scheme? And importantly, is it a qualifying scheme for automatic enrolment as well? Does your scheme use qualifying earnings to calculate the pensionable pay? Now, if it doesn't, then you will need to know exactly which pay elements are going to be pensionable. So things like salary, commission, bonuses, and so on. Now, if you are unsure, I can't stress this enough, it is always best to double check with your pension provider because these things affect the calculation. Best thing to do if you're unsure, just double check and then you can get it right the first time round. It just avoids any corrections, which we always like at the end of the day. So next up, is it a salary sacrifice scheme? Now, these are definitely becoming more and more popular. Now, is it set up as a salary sacrifice arrangement? If it is, the settings are going to be slightly different and the way those contributions are calculated will change too. So again, another really important thing to check. Next up, what are the contributions? So are they based on a fixed amount? Or are they percentage based? And what are those amounts or percentages as well? And another thing you'll want to check is whether the employee contributions are deducted before or after tax, as again, that is going to affect how Sage calculates it. And then finally, you do want to make sure you have your provider reference number. Now, this is a unique identifier from your pension provider that you'll enter into Sage 50 Payroll when setting up your scheme. And that's going to be more important, again, if you are using, say, the pensions module, as that will factor in when linking up your schemes. But again, if you are unsure of any of these details, your pension provider will be able to clarify that. And it is really important to get this info right, because Sage is going to use these settings to calculate those contributions automatically for you. So if anything is incorrect in here, that's going to have a knock-on effect to how that contribution amount turns out. Now, once you've gathered all that necessary info about your pension scheme, the next step is to actually set it up in Sage 50 Payroll. Now, before I go ahead and jump into the demo, got a few screenshots here just to walk through the key steps. So you'll start by going into your company tasks. You'll select pension schemes, and you'll see there a list of your default generic schemes. Now, these can be renamed and then edited to match the details of your actual pension scheme that you've set up with your provider. So you'll update the scheme settings, including contribution types, percentages, just to reflect exactly what you've agreed with your chosen provider. And I'll show you exactly how to do that in just a moment. Now, once your scheme is set up, another thing that is very important is checking your pay elements. And that's again to ensure they're correctly configured for your pension calculations. So this includes whether the scheme uses qualifying earnings. Now, if it does, you'll need to tick the qualifying earnings box for each relevant pay element. Now, qualifying earnings typically include things like salary, commission, overtime, bonuses, so on. So there is a list of examples just on the right-hand side there as well. Now, other key tick boxes to check. You've got pension main. Now, that is just for your standard pension contributions. You've got pension AVC. Now, these are for additional voluntary contributions that are made by the employee. And then you have salary sacrifice pension only. Now, that's there if your scheme is set up as a salary sacrifice arrangement. Now, you will want to repeat these checks for each pay element that you've got set up. And just really ensure that the correct boxes are ticked based on how your scheme is structured with your provider. Now, once everything is set up and in place, what Sage 50 Payroll will do is it'll use those settings alongside your pension scheme settings to then automatically calculate those contributions correctly for you. So I want to move into the first demo now. So I'll show you how to set up your scheme and configure your pay elements as well. So let's just lose these slides for now and jump into payroll. Now I'm logged into my company. I've got a monthly payroll, and I do just want to jump straight into my pension scheme section first. So I'm going to go into company and into pension schemes. You can see it's brought up a list of default schemes. So you can see some just generic names in there. But at the top of the list, you can see a couple of schemes that I've already set up. So I've got one for Nest and I've got another for my salary sacrifice arrangement. So I'm going to take a look at my Nest pension scheme first. I'm going to click Edit. You can see I do get a little pop-up, and this is just a reminder that this scheme is actually already assigned to at least one employee. So any changes that I make here are going to affect them too. So just really a bit of a heads up, nothing to worry about. So I'm going to press OK, and that's going to open up my pension scheme settings. You can see the split across 4 tabs. So I've got details, employee, employer, and provider as well. So very top, you'll see a reference number. Now this is just generated by Payroll and it'll be grayed out. So we can't actually change that. Below you've got your description box. So this is where you can name your scheme. I've just called mine Nest Pension. I've only got a couple of schemes, so it's nice and easy. I know exactly what it's going to link back to. Next is your scheme type drop down. Now you'll find several options in here. Now, some will automatically apply relevant settings based on the scheme type, so Master Trust, for example. But if your scheme isn't listed or you want to configure the settings yourself, you can just leave it as other, which is what I've done in my example. Now you can see some other options. You've got stakeholder, master trust, things like that. So again, if you are unsure, best practice there is just to check with the provider or leave it as other so you can go in and manually configure those settings yourself. Now, next field is a SCON field. Now that just stands for scheme contracted out number, and that's no longer relevant. It hasn't been for a while, so you are absolutely fine just to leave that blank. So now we're going to move on to some important key tick boxes. So first up, we've got qualifying scheme. Now, you just want to tick this if your scheme meets the minimum requirements to qualify for automatic enrolment. So that one doesn't really have an effect on the calculation. It's more just to signify, yes, this scheme is eligible for automatic enrolment. Next up, we have our use qualifying earnings for pensionable pay. Now, you want to tick this if your scheme calculates contributions based on qualifying earnings. Now, remember, qualifying earnings typically include like salary, commission, bonuses, overtime, and so on. So really any payments subject to tax or NI. Now, if this box is ticked, contributions will be calculated on earnings between the upper and lower automatic enrolment thresholds. And you can find those in your company legislation settings. Now, if your scheme is a salary sacrifice arrangement, you can see there is a tick box at the bottom there for that. And again, that is going to change how contributions are calculated. So another really important tick box. Now, with the SALSAC scheme, there isn't actually a direct employee contribution, just a salary reduction. So that will look a little bit different. Now I'm going to move on to the employee tab. So at the top, you can see we've got the contribution. And you can choose whether the contribution is a fixed amount or percentage. Now, I've just set mine to percentage of 5% of qualifying earnings. And on the right-hand side, you can see a list of tick boxes. Now, many of these, as you can see, relate to statutory payments, but those are grayed out automatically ticked, because we've actually specified that this scheme uses qualifying earnings. So in qualifying earnings scheme, these will all be included. Now, the final setting I want to highlight here, and it is again an important one as it affects the calculation, is deduct before tax. Now, this relates to your scheme's tax relief arrangement. Now, if your scheme uses net pay arrangement, you want to tick this box. However, if it is a relief at source scheme, you want to leave it unticked exactly as I have done so here. Now, with relief at source, just to explain the difference, the pension contribution is deducted after tax and the provider claims back that 20% tax relief directly from HMRC. So you will see a slightly lower contribution with that one. So I'm going to move on to the employer tab. It is pretty similar, just like the employee tab. You can see you've got an option to choose between percentage and fixed amount. Set mine to 3%, which combined with that 5% meets that minimum of 8% for my automatic enrolment. And then we have our provider tab as well. So you can enter your pension provider. So we've got the name in there. You've got optional fields like address and postcode, but more importantly, you can see I have my provider's reference in there. So This reference is very important if you are using the pensions module, as it will come into play when you are linking up your schemes. So always a good shout to have that before setting it up. So just as a quick recap before I move on to pay elements, I just want to recap the most important settings to double check. So remember, details tab, we've got our qualifying earnings for pensionable pay. So that's going to be ticked if your scheme is going to calculate contributions based on those qualifying earnings thresholds. We've got our SALSAC scheme tick box and our deduct before tax tick box as well. So ticked for net pay, unticked for relief at source. But again, if you are unsure of any of these settings, your pension provider will be able to confirm. Now, whilst we're still in here, I do want to take a quick look at my salary sacrifice scheme as well. So I'm just going to go in to edit that. Again, because that's assigned to an employee, I am getting a little pop-up just to give me a bit of a warning. Now, layout is the same as before, but a couple of key differences here. So on my details tab, although this is a qualifying scheme and it's using qualifying earnings as well, I also have salary sacrifice scheme ticked. And you can see now that I have that ticked, it has unlocked a new option for me. And that's to add the employee national insurance savings, the employer NI savings, to the pension contribution. Now, this is relatively new in payroll, but some providers do allow these NI savings to be reinvested into the employee's pension. So you can enable that setting here, but we do cover that in a lot more detail in our salary sacrifice pensions webinar. So do keep an eye out for that and get registered if you want to know more. So these tick boxes are remaining the same. Those settings are the same for this scheme. And quick check of my contribution rates. 5 and 3, again, they're meeting that 8%. Now, on the employee tab, you'll also notice that the deduct before tax option is no longer visible. That has changed wording. And that's because it doesn't apply to SALSAC schemes. So payroll automatically removes it and replaces it with reduced gross salary, just to avoid any confusion there. So that is my pension schemes reviewed. Next up, I want to check my pay element settings. So jump again, still in company, I'm going to jump into pay elements. And let's start with basic pay. So I'm just going to go through and edit these to review them. And you'll recognize this screen from the slide. So it is full of tick boxes. But the section we're most interested in is this middle section here, and this SALSAC on the left. So we've got our qualifying earnings, our pension main, pension AVC, and SALSAC tick box on the left-hand side there. So qualifying earnings, this should be ticked for most payments subject to tax and NI. So basic pay, that's looking correct. We've got pension main. So you want to tick this if the pay element should be included in that main pension contribution calculation, which I do want that for basic pay, so that's all looking good for me. Pension AVC, you want to tick that if it should be included in any additional voluntary contributions from the employee. And then salary sacrifice as well. So if you are using a SALSAC scheme, you do want to make sure this is ticked too. And because all 4 of these boxes are ticked, this pay element is fully pensionable and included in qualifying earnings as well. So any payments made through this element will be used in the pension contribution calculations. That's all looking spot on to me, so I'm just going to press OK. And let's take a look at expenses next. So this is looking very different. You'll see that none of the pension related boxes are ticked, not many other boxes either. And that's because expenses don't count towards qualifying earnings or pensionable pay. So we do want to make sure these are excluded from any calculations at all. So that's looking spot on. I can now move on to commission. So commission does count towards qualifying earnings. So you can see I have ticked that box. However, my particular pension scheme with my provider only actually includes basic pay in the contribution calculations. So although I've included it in qualifying earnings, I have unticked the other three boxes. So that means commission will be recognised for qualifying earnings, but it won't be used to calculate the contributions. And then we have overtime, which is the same story. So it's included in qualifying earnings, but not actually used in the contribution calculation for my scheme. So again, qualifying earnings box is ticked, but the rest unticked. Now, I've only got a few PM elements, so fairly easy for me to go through and just check them manually. But if you do have lots of P elements to check, bit of a top tip that might save you some time. So if you go into reports and company on the left hand side, you want to look for a report called payment types. Now I've favorited this. If I just go ahead and preview this report, what this is going to show you, it's going to show you all of the settings for each P element in your company. So you can see a simple layout with Y for yes, N for no. So it is a really great way just to quickly scan through, identify which elements are subject to pensions and qualifying earnings without having to open each one individually. So really good time saver there if you do have a lot of P elements that you all want to check. So that is how you check and configure your P elements in payroll and your pension schemes. Next, I want to look at actually assigning your pension scheme to your employees and how to manage your contributions as well. So just as a bit of a recap before we move on. So remember, first you want to set up your pension scheme using the info provided by your pension provider. You'll then want to double check your P element settings to confirm which ones should be included in qualifying earnings and in pension calculations. Once those steps are complete, then you're all good to go for the next part of the process, which is assigning that to your employees. So remember, as part of your ongoing duties as an employer, you are required to assess your employees every time that you pay them. Now, I did mention this earlier, but it is really a key part of staying compliant with auto enrolment regulations. Now, you can carry out this assessment manually, so you would review each employee's age and earnings. But if you are using the pensions module in payroll, you run a pension assessment, which automates that process for you. Now, remember, we do have a dedicated pension assessment webinar coming up, which will go into the module in a lot more detail. So definitely get signed up for that if you are a pensions module user. Now, when you assess your employees, you'll determine which worker category they fall into. So there are three main categories. There's eligible. So these are employees that have to be automatically enrolled in the scheme. There's non-eligible. So these are employees that don't meet the auto-enrolment criteria, but they can opt in if they choose. Then you've got entitled. So these employees can request to join a pension scheme, but you're not actually required to contribute. So a few things to check if you are going down the manual assessment route. Three key things. So first up is age. An easy way is to find this in the employee's record on the personal tab. It's just over on the right hand side. Now, top tip here, just use your process date. So if you set your process date to whenever your next pay date is, then check the personal tab. It's going to tell you their age at the time of payment, which is what you'll need to factor in. Secondly, you've got your UK worker status. So that is located in the record again in the employment tab. So there is a checkbox that indicates whether the employee qualifies as a UK worker. Remember, only UK workers actually qualify for auto enrolment. And then you've got the wage. So best thing to do here is go into enter payments. And under the information tab, you'll find a folder called pensions. In there, you'll be able to see the employee's qualifying earnings for that current period, which is then going to help you determine their eligibility. Now, based on these checks that you perform, employees are going to fall into one of those three worker categories that we mentioned earlier. Eligible, so age 22 to state pension age and earn above 10 grand a year. So those are the ones that have to be auto enrolled into the scheme. You've got non-eligible, so these are going to be people either outside of the age range or the earning range. So they're going to be earning below that 10,000 yearly, but above the 6,240. Now they can opt in if they choose, or they might be under, say, 20 years old, under the age bracket as well, remember. But again, they can opt in if they choose, and if they do, you will need to contribute. And then you've got entitled workers, so they're going to be earning below the £6,240. Now, they can request to join, but if they do join, you are actually not required to contribute. So that really would just be down to you whether you want to contribute into that or not. Now, once you've identified which employees are actually eligible, it's a simple case of assigning the pension scheme to them, which is what we'll take a look at next. So firstly, a really important point that I want to highlight. So you can assign a pension scheme to an employee manually in their record, which is what I'll be showing you today. However, if you are using the pensions module and you're using the pension assessment, you don't want to do this process. Instead, you let the pension assessment handle all of that for you. So it's designed to automatically assign the correct scheme based on your assessment results. So you don't need to do any of this manual process. So I have included a reminder on the slide just in case, so you have it there for your reference. But what we do want to look at is how to assign schemes manually for those of you who aren't using the module. So let's get jumped back into Payroll. So for those of you assigning those schemes manually, I want to show you how to do that. So for the sake of this webinar, I've actually already assigned schemes to a couple of employees, but I will be walking you through the process so you know exactly where to go. So first up is employee number one. Just going to open their record. I'm going to go along to the pensions tab. And you can see there is an option for manage schemes. So I'm going to go into manage schemes, and here you can see I've already assigned the Nest pension scheme to this employee. Now, if this was blank and you were just setting this up new, you would just simply click add instead. You can see this opens up a window where you can enter all of the key details. So you'd select the scheme from the drop down. So you can see I've got my two schemes to choose from there. You can assign a join scheme date. Now, this will, as you can see, default to your current processing date, which is the 30th of June, my next pay date. But you can amend that if you do need to. At the bottom there, we have got the contribution amounts. So you can change these if required, and it will change it just for that employee only. Now, they will pull through from the company scheme by default, but again, you can amend them for this particular individual if you need to, for whatever reason, because changes in this window actually only apply to that individual employee, even if others are on the same scheme. So really nice and simple to add it in. Once you're done, you can just click OK to save or cancel just to review. Now I do want to look at another employee, which is employee number 3. So again, I'm going to go into the record, along to pensions, and into manage schemes. Now, this employee is currently on a salary sacrifice scheme, but you can see they were actually previously in the nest scheme until 2021. And again, if you wanted to add a new scheme, you would click add, confirm the details, and adjust the dates or contributions if you do need to. So again, really assigning the scheme to an individual is really straightforward. But what if you need to assign a scheme to multiple employees all at once? So maybe you've had a scheme changeover, even if you've just got a lot of employees on your payroll, this is a really handy time saver. So you would select the affected employees, or even if you've, say, had an influx of new starters, you just need to select who you need to. And instead of doing it one by one, you can do it through global changes. So you would go to tasks just up at the top, down to global changes, into pensions, and add pension scheme. And you can see there, I have the option to choose what scheme I want to add and signify if it is the primary scheme as well. Once done, you would simply click OK. You'll see a little confirmation message and you'll click yes to proceed, and that will add the scheme on to employees in bulk. So definitely a method to save a lot of time compared to updating each employee individually. So that is how you assign pension schemes manually and in bulk. Next, I just want to finish off by checking contributions and making any amendments where needed. So remember, as a bit of a recap, we went into the employee's record, we click new, we added the selected pension scheme, checked our joint scheme date and our contributions as well. And one more reminder just about global changes. If you are needing to assign a pension scheme to multiple employees in bulk, it is tasks, global changes, pensions, and add pension scheme. So again, great time saver if you are introducing a new scheme or adding lots of employees at once. So next up to finish off is checking and amending contributions. So now that your schemes are assigned, we're ready for this final section. So we'll look at how to check your pension contributions and net payments, and if you need to make changes, the quickest way to amend contributions as well. So you can view your employee and employer contributions both in the summary tab of your enter payments. So the employees will show under deductions, dependent on scheme, and we will come around to that. And the employers can be viewed by clicking on the employer button just down at the bottom. So I've got two pension schemes set up, as you've seen, and the way you view contributions for the employee and employer will differ slightly depending on the scheme type. So we will look into that. Now, I know I highlighted this earlier, but again, remember you do have the option to amend an individual employee's pension contribution, even if multiple people are on that scheme. And we will take a look at that in the demo as well. So let's get jumped back into payroll just for one last demo. I'm going to use the same employees we were looking at earlier. So I'm going to highlight employees 1 and 3. Got my processing date set to my next pay date. And I'm going to go straight into enter payments. So on the payments tab, you can see the P element, bit of a mix of the P elements that we've got set up earlier. And we specified which elements should be included for those qualifying earnings and pension calculations. So I'm going to go along to the summary tab. So this is always the best place to check your contributions. See our payments on the left there and our pension contributions under deductions on the right. So my first employee, remember these are just on the Nest pension scheme. You can see their employee contribution is £85.20 for this period. That's looking spot on. And if we click on employers, So your pension current is £63.90. So that is all looking correct for my employee just on the Nest scheme. Now let's check employee 3. So they were on the salary sacrifice scheme. Still on the summary tab, but something you'll notice is that the employee contribution appears to be 0. Now, this does often catch people out. They think it's not calculating and it can cause a bit of panic sometimes, but it isn't the case. So salary sacrifice works differently. So instead of showing an employee deduction, the combined employer and employee contribution appears in the employer box. So you can see there that amount is much higher than the previous example because it's including both contributions. So both schemes are calculating correctly, they're just displayed differently in enter payments. But top tip with SalSac is if you do want to check the employee sacrifice, you can do so by looking at the payments tab. You can see we have the salary sacrifice on there as well. Now, I do want to look at amending contributions, so I'm going to go back to employee 1. Now, if you do need to amend an employee's contribution, here is a really good tip to save a bit of time. So we've got £85.20 at the moment, but this employee actually wants to up their contributions this pay period. So instead of closing out event payments, I'm going to click in the shortcut icon in the top left to go straight into the employee's record. That'll then allow me to go to pensions, into manage schemes, and then edit. And from here, I can make the amendments I need to. So this employee is actually going to change their normal contribution to a fixed amount of £100. And they're going to do an additional voluntary of £20 as well. But employers are going to remain exactly as it is. Now, remember, this change applies only to this employee and it'll stay in place until you go in and manually update it again. So if I press OK on that, and I'm just going to save and close out of the record, and you can see straight away that's amended my contribution. So I've not actually even had to leave enter payments to do this. I've just went in through the shortcut and made that change straight away. So good tip there, just as a bit of a time saver. So that does bring us to the end of the demonstrations today. So that is how you view your contributions for different scheme types. So we've seen the difference there between the normal nest scheme and the salary sacrifice scheme. And we have looked at how to quickly amend those contributions where needed as well. So if someone's maybe increasing it as a one-off or doing any additional voluntary contributions also. Now, just in the nick of time, that does bring us to the end of today's webinar. Now, I do want to finish things up just by running through some further support. So remember, today actually kicks off our Pensions Discovery 2026 series. So the best bit about this is you can attend at least 5 different webinars plus a quiz, and you will earn your very own digital badge. So it's a really great way to show off what you have learned. Now, every session runs twice across June and early July, so there is plenty of flexibility to find a time that works for you. Now, one quick tip, please register using the same email address for every session. It is how we track your attendance, so definitely important when it comes to earning that badge. So plenty of dates and times to choose from there, so make sure to get registered and hope to see you on some of those. Now, the Help Centre is a great resource, so you can access this by clicking on your help icon in Sage 50 Payroll or via the web just by going to sage.co.uk/help. We've got our technical support guides on there, we've got our recorded on-demand webinars on there, and info on how to get in touch with our fab tech support team if you do need to as well. And last but not least, just to let you know, we do offer personalised one-to-one training now. So if a dedicated one-to-one remote session with one of our experts sounds good to you, so they can tailor the call to you, your needs, then all you want to do is just scan the QR code and complete the form. It's dead quick to complete. Someone reaches out within 48 hours to chat to you and make some recommendations on what they think would suit you and your needs as well. So really great if you just want to gain some confidence or just to make your day-to-day easier. Please do let us know by scanning that QR code. And that will also be included in the handout as well. So scan it now or scan it later, and someone will be in touch once we receive the completed form. So that does bring us to the end of today's webinar. Now, if you are leaving us at this point, if you do have a second to fill out the survey, that would be much appreciated. We do always love reading all of your comments. Now, I am going to jump on mute for now just to check on the question situation, but I will see you all very shortly to wrap today's session up. Hello again, everyone. I really hope you've all enjoyed today's session. I will go ahead and close the session down in the next few minutes or so. Looks like we've got all of those questions taken care of. Again, as you do exit the webinar, you will see a short survey. If you please can take a moment to fill it out, your feedback is always really valuable to us. We love hearing what you thought, anything that worked well, anything that can be improved, so we can keep making these sessions even better for you. Now, you will also receive a follow-up email later today. It'll have a link to today's webinar recording on there and information on how to register for any future sessions. But a big thanks again from me, Duncan and Alice for joining us today. Hopefully we will see you again soon, but it is goodbye for now.